Good afternoon. Welcome to the Public Works and Gang Reduction Committee meeting. Today's Wednesday, May 7th, and I'm Chairman Joe Buscaino, and I'm joined by Council Member Curran Price. And we'd like to welcome each and every one of you to our exciting agenda. We are going to, unless Mr. Price, you have any concerns, questions, comments, approve item 2 and 4 on consent.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, that'll be the order. Items 2 and 4 will approve, Michael. And we'll take the first item, item number 1.
Item number 1 is a communication for the mayor relative to the extension of the appointment of Ms. Deborah Weintraub as interim city engineer for an additional 6 months.
Okay, let's bring Ms. Weintraub to the table. Thank you so much for your service thus far.
Thank you for the opportunity.
You've been so responsive to me and my colleagues, and I want to personally thank you for your ongoing commitment and dedication to our city at this capacity. So the mayor has asked for an extension of 6 months. And let me ask you, how is the Bureau, give me the state of the Bureau of Engineering today, and what are its challenges in the next month or two facing budget, and some of the biggest issues in the Bureau?
The state of the Bureau of Engineering, is that we are quite strong. As we are in the midst of budget discussions, our challenges are forefront in my mind, and those have to do with two things, which is that we are an aging group since we haven't hired for close to 5 years. So we have started this year to hire again entry level, and we need to really continue that through next fiscal year. And the second concern is that we need to add to our development services staff in order to meet what is a good thing, which is the growth in development around the city.
Those two issues, are they being addressed in this next, during these current budget discussions?
Yes, they are.
They are.
So I just mentioned those. Those are highlights in our current budget discussions.
And I love your resume. It's pretty impressive.
Thank you.
Tell me your background and training as an architect.
Right.
And how it, as opposed to being a civil engineer, how does that affect your perspective leading this bureau?
So briefly, my background is that I am a licensed architect with a focus on sustainability issues and urban design. How it affects my perspective is I have enormous respect for all of my professional colleagues, but I have a particular concern for design aesthetics. I think every project we do as engineering in the city is an opportunity to renovate a small piece of the city, whether it's a sidewalk, a building, a park. And we're a world-class city, so all of those elements need to be world-class, and I think I bring that perspective.
I appreciate that. Mr. Price?
No, I'd just want to just welcome you, and you certainly have an impressive background, and I know a long history, long distinguished history with the city, and so we appreciate all of your efforts. You mentioned the efforts of the department to kind of staff up, that's sort of aging. And my question is, what are we doing anything special? Any special initiatives? Any special focus on assuring that we have the kind of diversity?
Yes.
That's so important
Yes.
in staff, especially in this position where you're sort of touching everything that happens in the city. And how do we make sure that we get good trained individuals who can grow into seasoned professionals that really represent the diversity of the community in ways that we haven't before?
So it's a timely question because I just met this earlier Monday. I met with 40 of our new hires, and looking around the room, the diversity of the young folks who are coming in is reassuring. And that is as a result of our emphasis on making sure that we're hiring from, we're going to local schools, but that we're hiring folks who come from all backgrounds. The other interesting thing about this diverse group of young kids, and it would, I think, have been pleasing to you to look around the faces that I saw, many of these youngsters are coming in with bachelor's and master's. And there was more education in this room than there probably would be with some of us older folks. I think a lot because they didn't have opportunities for work, so they went on and got master's degrees. So we have an impressive group of young folks to pick from, and they're mixed backgrounds, good mixture of men and women, a really strong, diverse group. It is a priority of ours and will continue to be a priority of ours.
Thank you. We're joined by Councilmember Gil Cedillo. Any questions for our interim city engineer?
No. I'm excited. You embody and reflect diversity and competence. And I think you can have both without being uncompromised in either area. And I think that's very important. I've appreciated during our time here working with you and your bureau. And I have engineers on my staff, so planners and engineers. So obviously you're the darling of our office, and we appreciate that. I obviously share the concerns of my colleagues, and there are good schools in the areas, and there's really good schools in the areas to provide us that workforce. And so
Correct.
we got some great universities, Cal Poly Pomona, we got UCLA, Oxford. We got a lot of good schools, and so.
And that's where we've been recruiting, from
Yeah.
the local schools. We have quite a number to go to.
Yeah.
Cal State Long Beach, Cal State
Yes.
Northridge, yeah,
Right.
right.
No, they got some great programs.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Cedillo. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Gary Lee Moore is doing a great job at the Port of Los Angeles as the interim port director. And I want to thank him also for his ongoing service. So with that, we have a motion for item 1.
So moved.
Okay, moved and seconded by Mr. Price. That'll be the order. And
Thank you all. Thank you very
thank you so much, Deborah, for your service. And we'll see you at council. Thank you. With that, take item number 3. If you can read that into the record, please.
Item number 3 is a report from the Bureau of Engineering relative to a vacation of a portion of the alley northwesterly of Main Street between 9th Street and Olympic Boulevard.
And we pulled this item. I believe we had an amendment to this item. If I can bring up, I have a speaker card, Jessica McLean from Mr. Weezar's office, and she'll be joined by Mr. Edmund Yu from BOE. And we have a technical correction rather than an amendment.
Yeah, good afternoon, Edmund Yu, Bureau of Engineering. This is a vacation request for an alley within the block. The applicant owns most of the property within this block, and they have been working with other property owners in trying to vacate this alley. Based on the circulation and access and public works, we have no problem as far as with the vacation of this alley, so we are recommending for approval. The only thing is that after the preparation of our report, we recognize that we are missing one set of recommendation from the Department of Transportation. That's why we want to add that back into the records as a condition. So I'm going to read that into the record.
Please do. Thank you.
This is a condition number 15 that BOE would like to recommend to add to the approval. Condition number 15, that the petitioner comply with the project requirements of the LADOT June 27, 2013 letter to the Department of City Planning under case number CEN 12-40746 to the satisfaction of the Department of Transportation.
Thank you, Edmund. If you can hand that over to Michael or Mr. or Clerk, that'd be helpful. Thank you. Jessica?
I believe the condition that that BOE just read was related to the Department of Transportation reference to the Broadway Streetscape Plan, which in it it recognizes that there was a voluntary improvement of 2 blocks of the streetscape plan to be built out. As a condition of the approval of this requested alley vacation, we've worked with the applicant and they will deliver 4 blocks of the streetscape plan, not 2, so that if there's a discrepancy there, that the current information should be 4 blocks. So if you'd like, I can read this or I can hand it.
Please read it for the record. Yes, thank you.
As a condition of the approval of the requested alley vacation, the applicant shall be required to engineer, implement, construct, and complete the Broadway Streetscape Master Plan improvements along both sides of Broadway on 4 blocks, 7th to 8th, 8th to 9th, 9th to Olympic, and Olympic to 11th, beginning the southern portion of the intersection of Broadway and 7th, beginning of the curb return on Broadway south of the intersection, and extending through the northern portion of the intersection of Broadway and 11th from the beginning of the curb return on Broadway north of the intersection. The applicant shall meet with DOT and Department of City Planning to verify road width and sidewalk dimensions required, etc. The applicant shall design and implement this improvement through BOE's B permit process or otherwise as instructed by BOE.
Very good. Mr. Clerk, can you read that and repeat what she just said?
I have it for you, Michael.
Okay, please hand that to him. Thank you so much. Questions, colleagues?
No.
Motion to approve this item?
Move.
Okay, moved by Mr. Price, seconded by Mr. Cedillo.
And just for clarification, that's approved
We'll
as
approve
amended.
as amended, yes, item number 3, thank you. Okay, let's take items 8 and 9 together. These are tree trimming related items.
Item number 8 is a motion from council members Labange and Buscaino relative to the status and possible revisions to the city's street tree policy. This one was also referred to the Budget and Finance Committee. And item number 9 is a motion from council members Huizar and Buscaino relative to the fiscal year 2012-13 and 2013-14 tree trimming contracts with the recommendations for future tree trimming contracts.
Okay, we have some questions here from the table. If we can, urban forestry here?
Correct.
Thank you so much.
Greg Monfett with the Urban Forestry Division.
Thank you so much. Can you explain to us our current tree trimming cycle, where it stands now, and the process for issuing contracts and how long it takes?
Our current cycle now is approximately about once every 24 years. Historically, over the past few decades, we've gone everywhere from 5.5 years on up to 32 years.
What do you attribute that backlog to?
Well, it's actually commensurate with the budget, is how we come up with the formula. So depending upon the budget, the amount we get per tree, how many trees we have, is how we factor what the years take. It doesn't necessarily mean we're going to be waiting 24 years to trim a tree. That just means that's what we have the monies to do. If the tree needs it on an emergency basis, we move in there with the forces we have and do what trimming we can.
So to paint a picture, what's the dollar amount to get caught up?
Well, currently, right now, we're at 24 years, as I mentioned. Ideally, what we'd like to see is a 5-year cycle. For best management practices purposes, in accordance with the street tree policies, 5 years is appropriate. What we feel at this time is if we had $10 million of additional monies moved forward to us, we can achieve the 5-year cycle.
And talk to me about the advantages of disadvantages of going through an outside contract versus using city crews.
Well, the advantages of using city forces is, we're efficient, we're on time, you're able to, if we're staffed appropriately, you're able to get it done in a reasonable amount of time. You don't have these delays that we have on going out to bid and different things, and the quality of our work is relatively good. The disadvantages of going contract is the amount of time it currently takes to put a contract out, but also with some of the recent situations that we've had with contractors, some of them selling businesses, going out of business, pulling off the job, and so forth, has really set us back. And then contract prices are starting to come in higher as well.
Is it because there's more of a need, and they know that we need the outside contracts to come in, and they're using that to their advantage on the pricing?
I think that could be part of it, but I don't think that's all of it, quite frankly. When you have, in the city of Los Angeles, when you're trimming trees on a regular basis, you can kind of contain the price. But if you go for many years of not trimming, and now you have these trees that are extremely overgrown, extremely large and extremely overgrown, there's more work involved. But another thing that drives the price is the location of the trees. The size of the trees within the grid and the location of the trees. What I mean by that is if we develop one big grid, and logistically it's easy to move through,
Right.
and if that grid contains large trees as well as small trees, because it's important to trim small trees for structural stability as well as not just pruning large trees, but that helps keep the cost down.
The proprietary departments have tree trimmers, is that my understanding? So
Some of them do.
DWP, Port of LA, they have...
That's correct, sir.
Okay. Is it possible to consolidate the proprietary departments, urban forestry, into one city urban forestry division?
I mean, I think there's always that possibility. I think it's going to take a number of negotiations, a number of discussions. We've had this come across the table before. It's not a new idea to us.
Why hasn't it happened?
Excuse me?
Why hasn't it happened?
You know, I don't know that I know the answer to that, but one thing that's important to understand is that each of us do have different maintenance needs and different safety and training requirements. For example, the Department of Water and Power works in close proximity to high power lines. And by law, you have to be certified to work around those lines. Rec and Parks trims trees a little bit differently because the need of the tree is a lot different than in a parkway setting. Park trees are a lot different than city parkway trees because of their location. So the trimming is different. Not that we can't do theirs or they can't do ours. It's just a little bit of cross-training. But I think that it's definitely something, you know, we're interested in taking a look at. I think it just takes some meetings and some discussions and some negotiations.
Before I turn to my colleagues, last question. So we need to fund $10 million to get caught up on the 5-year cycle.
That's annually.
Annually.
Correct.
Has the division of the department looked at grant funding, state funding, federal dollars to make up for that shortfall?
We haven't actually to reach out for that big of amount of money. We haven't looked into that at this time. I mean, we can take a look in that area. Anything we can get to help us would be good.
Maybe two of my colleagues, Senator Price and Senator Cedillo, they know some people up north that can bring in some dollars down here. I'll turn it over to my colleagues. Questions?
Yes, thank you for your presentation. Got a question with these budget cuts. I mean, this is certainly a quality of life issue in many communities where trees have not been trimmed in a while. I guess there are a lot of communities that fit that category. I'm talking about those I represent, however, they're in South LA. Every now and then we'll get a tree trimmed where the sidewalk is just coming up like this. Is there any priority in terms of trees that are cut down, and was that just a courtesy to me at the time, or do you focus on those sidewalks that are just totally buckled so you can get those trees down, or not? What's the kind of pecking order? How do you decide where you go, and what drives your work?
Are you talking about for sidewalk repair?
Sidewalk, well, yeah.
Well, sidewalk repair, you know, we're not funded for sidewalk repair, so there's usually special monies for sidewalk repair. So those locations are provided to us.
So you wouldn't deal with a tree where the sidewalk is buckled. That's a sidewalk issue. It's not a tree issue as far as your.
Well, I mean, it is a tree issue, but if I think I understood your question correctly, how do we go about selecting what locations is what I thought the question was. Being that there's so many locations in the city of Los Angeles, when the money comes forward, there's usually locations identified for it. And we'll usually go in and take the worst of the worst out. That's usually what directs us towards locations.
So you have a running list by district then, or just the worst trees, in the worst locations in the city, or what's the...
We don't necessarily have a running list, but in our service request system, we have a lot of requests for sidewalk repair, a lot of requests for tree roots buckling sidewalk, or for root pruning, and so forth.
And you have a lot of requests, and again, I'm just trying to figure out what the process is for determining what gets done and what doesn't get done. How does a decision made?
As far as sidewalk repair goes, because we're not funded for sidewalk repair, when that comes forward to us, it comes with some identified funds, and the locations would usually come with that package. So a certain amount of money would be earmarked to repair a certain amount of locations within a certain district.
Okay. Well, let's say it's not the sidewalk. Let's say it's just a tree tree that hasn't been trimmed in years, covering up the sign. You know, it's just a real visual obstruction to life in the city. What do you do with those situations?
Right. What we try to do there is we try to prioritize according to the need. Not having much funding in previous years, so therefore we don't have it set in a grid system back in the day. When we get into a 5 and 7 year cycle, we have maps. We can tell you when the tree was last trimmed. We can tell people when the next scheduled trimming is. That's what's important about getting into a 5 or 7 year grid. But when we have that, we're able to determine when it's going to be done. These days, we go with priority. We go with the need. We go with the request. Our inspectors take a look at it. If the tree's in an unsafe manner, that's pretty much the area where we're targeting trimming. We don't really have the ability to do it in a proactive manner, which is the way we'd like to do it. We're more doing it in a reactive manner. So it's usually on a request basis, but we assess it and assign it according to priority.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Steele?
So how do we get you to the optimum?
Yeah.
How do you get us to the optimum? Well, I think that, as I mentioned, if, we're currently at about a 24-year cycle, and we feel if we had 10 million annually added to our budget, we can get down to a 5-year cycle. Now, what that means is, initially, once we get the money, we won't be at 5 years.
Right.
Because we got to go out, we have to plan it, we have to go into certain areas and try to grid out each district. And that's going to be hard to do the first year, the first or second year, because a lot of the trees need to be trimmed. So there'll be a little bit of distribution throughout the districts on trimming, but after year 2 and 3, we'd be focusing into grid pruning. And we have the better ability then into grid pruning, because you can't go out the first year and start establishing the grids and leave the trees that need to be trimmed alone.
Right.
We're going to need to scatter around a little bit. But that would be the start with it.
So the transition takes a year or two, and then we'd need 25 million to position you to then be able to go forward on a 5 to 7 year cycle.
Most likely. Yeah, most likely. One of the things the Bureau directors are looking at doing here now is we're going to be going into multi-year contracting, but we're also going to be going with on-call contracting. It's important for us to not only get contracts established so we know they're going to be going out every year and not have this 6 to 9 month wait. We also want to be able to have the ability on the on-call contractor to go into certain council districts and get some of the priority trees trimmed without having to wait, without having to put it on contract. That's going to help us kind of tune into the grid system because we'll have that ability to go outside on the on-call.
What's the relationship of percent between in-house and outside?
Well, a couple of years ago, it was all in-house because it was all cut, and for the 13-14 year, they funded us $4 million for contract monies. So that kind of weighted it more towards the contract. There's some discussion now about possibly moving that and bringing city forces back, but it's important to have a little bit of a balance of both.
Right.
We feel the multi-year and the on-call contracts, but the majority of the percentage city forces. Not just for the trimming and the different service advantages that I mentioned earlier that we can do, but also for emergency purposes. We have to have our staff available for emergency purposes.
Would they be the better position for the on-call to have our own in-house? Or
It would be, and we're actually, I believe we've got a couple packages in budget for that type of an item. We would like to have the ability of both. One thing good about the on-call contract is we're not obligated. And the prices are a little high as far as the unit price goes, but if something comes up and the need comes up and arises, at least we have the ability to go.
Yeah.
So that's our director's vision on that.
What's our existing personnel?
A little less than 100. Back in the day, we had about 235 to 250, and in 2009, we were reduced. We lost staff to other divisions and other departments, and now we're down a little bit under 100.
Is it my understanding this next fiscal year you're looking at adding tree trimmers to the budget?
That's correct, yeah.
How many?
I think it's 15, yeah, and then, we're obviously working some items up to even increase that more if the opportunity comes.
Okay. We good?
it was a mess.
I know. Very similar to our streets and sidewalk issue. It's such a backlog at the same time. There's such a great need, and some of the frustrations that now we've inherited. It's something that we need to really take a hard look at and make some bold decisions moving forward. And I encourage my colleagues to join me and others that want to try to find some outside funding to get caught up if we can't find it in our existing budget today. If I may, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks so much for your presentation, your support, and your service to our city. Please offer our gratitude to the men and women of the division, and let them know that I know at times they're frustrated as much as we are on the need of this issue, and their hands are tied. But know we're going to get through this.
I'll do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to amend this motion, if I may, and instruct the CAO to report with the comparative analysis of the direct and indirect costs of using contract crews versus city crews, and also instruct the Bureau of Street Services to report on the feasibility of consolidating all tree trimming, including that currently performed by the Department of Recreation and Parks, Harbor Department, DWP, into the Urban Forestry Division of the Bureau of Street Services. Michael will get you that this text here.
And will that be for item number 8 or item number 9?
Item 8.
Item 8, thank you.
And we'll move both items, hearing no objection, both items 8 and 9 to council. And we'll get the report back in council.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, I have a comment, a public, a speaker card on item 9. Is it Kevin representing Mr. Weezar's office? Oh gosh, Okubio?
That's right, yeah.
Fantastic.
Good afternoon.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, council members. The motion for item 9 before you today makes a similar request to take a look at how our tree trimming contracts are administered. As we all know, tree trimming services remain high in demand, and despite strained fiscal resources of the Street Services Bureau. Working with city staff, we've identified several solutions. Some of are identified in the motion, and we would urge you or support your movement to refer this to staff and for the report back to come.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kevin. Okay, let's take to item number 5.
Item number 5 is a report from the Bureau of Engineering relative to the redesignation of a public alley to pedestrian mall for the north-south alley Westerly of Avalon Boulevard from 52nd Street to approximately 100 feet northerly thereof.
Okay, if we can have staff come forward. I see Mr. Edwin Yu.
Good afternoon, Edmund Yu, Bureau of Engineering.
Anyone here from Trust Public Land or Bureau of Sanitation? Please come forward. Just give us an overview of the report before us. And I have a couple questions for sanitation. Mr. Yu, thank you.
Okay, this is a request to reclassify an existing public alley into pedestrian mall. Pedestrian mall is something that's authorized under the state law to allow the area to remain as a public right-of-way, but vehicular access will not be permitted in the area in the future. So this report is a recommendation from Bureau of Engineering to approve this reclassification. This alley is part of a bigger Green Alley demonstration project within CD9 in the vicinity of Avalon and 52nd Street. And sanitation, I think that they are the team lead on this project, and they have identified that this portion of the alley would like to be classified as a pedestrian mall. The remaining of this alley system would remain as public alley, but will be under construction for some other purposes. Sanitation, they can give you more details.
Yes, specifically on the Green Alley. Can you explain to us what a Green Alley is? I'm anxious to hear your report, sir.
Yes. Good morning, council members. Steve Nicotto with the Bureau of Sanitation.
He's our employee of the month. You helped with our clock. Thank you so much.
Very welcome. Happy to serve. Green alleys, they're an attempt to, I always read off of this because I always mess it up. The main effort is to kind of convert nuisance alleys to potential open space for multi-beneficial uses, such as green open space. We're taking like existing dirt alleys or deteriorated asphalt alleys and restoring them and providing some green elements to provide some green space and just kind of open up the area for the community. It would also provide pedestrian benefits, establish what we call green connections within the community, and through these efforts kind of collectively, as we implement them through the city, we like to do more and more as much as we can to also reduce heat island effects and to also from a sanitation perspective, one of our emphasis is for stormwater capture and potential use or reuse for those green elements. So this project is, as Edmund referred to, is part of a larger effort for what we call our Green Alley Network, Avalon Green Alley Network in South LA. And we're partnering with Trust for Public Land, and I have Laura Balak from the Trust for Public Land also here, our project partner. And the Green Alleys are kind of something that developed out of our initiative that began around 2007, 2008 to develop a Green Streets program through the city. At that time, it was championed by former Commissioner Paula Daniels of the Board of Public Works, and it continues now with Commissioner Barbara Romero. And it's an interdepartmental effort, so it's not just public works, but involves building and safety, planning, rec and parks, transportation, and other agencies through the city to try to implement green measures where we can throughout the city. And again, these would be green streets or green alleys. We've worked on developing standard plans, trying to implement demonstration projects through the city. And again,
Do we have any green alleys or existing green alleys in the city? Or this would be the first one?
this will be one of the first down south. We've had some in North Hollywood.
Any lessons learned? Any lessons learned from the other green alleys?
I think we just learned maybe probably some lessons as far as just constructability, measures, things we can do to make things a little easier for ourselves. I think part of it is also we're developing some standard plans that we hope to test out, and we'll work to modify those as needed as we learn more from more and more projects. I know that we're looking at potentially doing some other alley networks within the South LA area as well and throughout the city.
Thanks, Steve. Trust for Public Land, would you like to say a few words about the project?
Laura Balak with the Trust for Public Land. Unfortunately, we are underway with some park building in addition to the Green Alleys work, and I think you all know Patton Street and Monitor Avenue. And within Council District 9, we're very pleased to have the support of the council member for the Green Alley, just alleys in general, and bringing them to the...
For the record, can you identify the council member in CD9, please?
When it's grinning.
Councilmember Price, thank you. And bringing the level of attention to these areas that are in the back doors of, and sometimes front doors of many people within the city. And I did bring a graphic here today just to kind of fill out a little bit of the description of a green
look
alley.
at that.
And so this is an early concept for the pedestrian walkway.
Wow, that looks great.
And demonstrates the potential for what can happen when we can take pieces of the alleys that are not used for residents to get to their front doors. For example, it doesn't block off parking. We've done a careful analysis of where this can happen, and demonstrates the capacity for an alley to become more than just a leftover piece of the city that kind of has outgrown its historical purpose. So we have done the rounds of analyzing this carefully, talking to the different departments, talking with fire, talking with LAPD, and just understanding how are these pieces really used within the city. There's 900 miles of alleys in the city, 230 in the council member Price's district, and also in other elements. And so this is a demonstration project to explore this opportunity. We've been in this neighborhood, as Steve mentioned, for 6 years, working on the ground, getting community members involved in the process of design and growing the capacity of the neighbors for stewardship, because we understand that not just the design and construction, but the future maintenance of this piece will not only become part of the official city system for sanitation, but become part of stewardship.
Part of the 25-year backlog to trim our trees.
Exactly. There's definitely a need to get the residents involved, and they're learning through our partnership with Tree People about growing and maintaining trees. So it's kind of we are in the business of making sure these projects that we're building everywhere is success, and that's what we're doing.
Thanks, Laura. That's an incredible asset. Mr. Price, go ahead, turn over to you. This is your
thank
district.
you.
It's amazing.
This is an exciting project in the district, certainly consistent with our efforts to make the district clean and green. You mentioned the tremendous network of alleys that exist citywide, almost a third of them in the 9th district. And at a time when we were trying to get these alleys cleaned, removing bulky items and debris and trash, I think it's important that we show we can really transform these alleys into areas where people can use them. And so this is an exciting project. As you know, it's adjacent to some other significant public sector investments. Maya Angelou
school complex is there, adjacent to the wetlands project, which is not far from there. And so I'm just really excited that it's been a real collaboration with the Bureau, with the Trust for Public Land, and very creatively. And it's members, it really involved the community. As you said, it was a 6-year process. We hope the next one won't take 6 years, but we're certainly learning a lot. But it brings the community together, gives them some ownership in it, and it helps them play an active role in transformation. And so I'm just excited that some of the first efforts are going to be in the 9th. Excited there's been this real collaboration to make it happen, and look forward to it developing a model that we can, really lay out other parts of the 9th and other parts of the city as well.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Price, for your leadership on this and moving this project forward. And, we all have a sense of urgency in trying to improve the quality of life in our respective districts. And so just education purpose, how can Mr. Cedillo and I get a bunch of green alleys in our districts?
Thought you might ask.
We'd be happy to meet with the members of your office or staff and investigate any opportunities for such projects in your districts.
No, we have, I had an incredible experience with TPL and Teresa Villegas working. We did Taylor Yards and cornfields, I think. And we're working on something else. But this Green Alleys, congratulations for the new 9th, because I think it's a model. And I know we've been cleaning with the Bureau of Sanitation and doing a great job, but I think that's part of the way of stabilizing the communities if we follow up those efforts of cleaning them up and then put them to public use. So.
Would just like to mention also, I know we've acknowledged TPLs, and Laura has definitely been a great help for me working on this project. And I mentioned some of the other city agencies, but I'd be neglectful if I didn't mention that this is collaboration not just with city departments, but with other nonprofits and community organizations. So we have buy-in on the ground with the community members here, and as part of our overall Green Streets effort, we're now, in addition to folks like the Trust for Public Land, we have the Council for Watershed Health, Northeast Trees, and some of the other environmental and nonprofit groups. So we're working, together trying to find opportunities and solutions, funding opportunities as well. So it's a great collaboration that we're very happy about.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you so much for your presentation. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So no speaker cards on this item. Hearing no objection, we'll approve BOE's report and move item 5 forward. Final item today is item number 7.
Item number 7 is a report from the City Administrative Officer relative to the bridge improvement program's total budget and cost to complete the seismic bond component.
Good afternoon, welcome.
Good afternoon, thank you. Lori Hancock with the CAO.
Jim Treadaway with the Bureau of Engineering.
Thank you.
This year's annual report reflects a budget of $833.3 million. That is a decrease from last year's budget of $12.3 million, and that is mainly a decrease in the amount of federal funding of $15.2 million, an increase in $2.7 million in additional other funds, and an increase of $22,000 in Prop G. There is a $9.4 million deficit projected over the course of the program. Originally, when we looked at this budget in 12-13, there was a $15.4 million deficit, and we have identified $4 million in MICLA and $2 million in Measure R to meet that goal, and our approach is to...
I'm sorry, to make up for that $9.4 million?
It was originally $15.4 million. We have found $6 million, which brings our now deficit down to $9.4.
Okay, what are we doing to address that deficit?
In the current year's budget, in the mayor's projected budget, there is $2 million allocated for MICLA, and we're looking to decrease that or erode the deficit annually over the next 6 to 7 years with allocations from other sources of funding. These monies are highly leveraged with federal dollars. We generally use Prop G at a 9-to-1 ratio. So when we have any other additional monies...
Prop G?
The seismic bond.
Very good.
Okay. So this is a result of a reforecasting analysis where we looked at current scope, estimates, grant funding authorizations, and the staffing needs. The program needs to be extended for an additional 1 year due to the Glendale Hyperion project, which is going to take an additional year due to looking at additional bikeways and other things that have been come up during the environmental process. The report before you actually has 4 recommendations, and our office supports all 4 of them. The first one is to authorize the new budget of $833.3 million, authorize the extension of the program for 1 year, instruct the BOE to come back and annually to report on this budget, and to ask the CAO, CLA, and BOE to continue to address the funding gap.
Great. Move it.
Okay. With that, Mr. Cedillo moves the item, seconded by Mr. Price. That will be the order to approve item number 7. Thank you for your presentation. Now time for general public comment.
And Mr. Chair, item number 6, I don't think we've...
We didn't hear item 6?
So would you like to take that on consent, or would you like to...
You know what, it seems, I'm sorry, that was an oversight. Thank you, Michael. Seems per Mr. Engler's office, the problem's been solved, so we'll receive and file item number 6. My bad.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Do we have any general public comment cards, Michael?
No, we do not.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. So with that, this Public Works and Gang Reduction Committee meeting is now adjourned. Thank you very much.
Bam. Good job, man.